Oh, and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christine Marie, and today we are diving into a very fundamental question that we can never answer too many times, which is your foundation strong? Are you actually living in accordance with who you want to be? Are you, to use Mr. J's analogy, are you actually tackling 10th floor problems when your foundation isn't strong? And so today we're going back to the basics. We're actually examining kind of our inner world before we can really get to the external world. And I'm so thrilled to have Mr. J here. Mr. J, you are certified betrayal trauma practitioner, which frankly I didn't even know that category of practitioner existed. But betrayal trauma, those are the things that really make it so that our wake is messy and rocky, and it is the very thing that could really fundamentally ruin our foundation and have holes and cracks in the foundation. And so what you do and the change that you're making for so many individuals and families as a relationship coach and also a betrayal trauma practitioner, you've done so much in terms of both ministry, coaching, theater, psychology. It's just so fun. So I'm so happy to know you and to meet you. So thank you for coming on the show and chatting with me today.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you. I feel honored. I appreciate your time, Christine.
I'm so excited. I we were introduced. And actually, Mr. J, I think on your phone there might be a little. I hear a little bit of echo. Do you mind just? I don't know how. Can you turn down the sound on your phone?
I absolutely can.
I think that actually might help. Hey, everybody over at TikTok, if you can hear.
And if not, I can try to recommend people come here. If you still hear an echo, let me know.
That I hear no echo. That was perfect.
Oh, okay.
Y'all, I'm so excited for this conversation because Mr. J, while we're talking about a foundation and while we're talking about the things that effectively cause cracks and cause holes, I'd love to hear from you and your perspective. What is it in terms of why people come to you in the first place?
Well, very good question. And people come to me for various reasons. So my field, my niche is a betrayal trauma practitioner. So what I do is I help people help themselves on the journey from going from, broken to a breakthrough.
Mm,
Now I talk with clients who just discovered there was a betrayal in their relationship, and they're literally bear hugging the toilet and vomiting while we're talking. And then I talk to people who are 30, 40 years out of their betrayal, but they've never dealt with it, or certain
mm.
life circumstances are bringing it back up. And so that's usually where people come to me. Now, obvious, I do other things. I do, I'm very big on intrapersonal relationships. That's the relationship we have with ourselves, which I
Mm,
always say sets the tone and standard for all relationships around us. I'm very
wow.
big with boundaries, very big, but my niche is definitely people that have been shattered by betrayal trauma. And I just want to say this: although 85 to 90% of my clients or couples are dealing with some type of infidelity or affair within their relationship or marriage, I will say betrayal trauma, the mere definition is there has to be a dependency or a reliance upon.
Mm,
So you could have betrayal trauma from a dear friend. You could have
mm.
betrayal trauma from a company or a job or an institution because you depend on that. I work with many people who say, Mr. J, I gave this company my blood, sweat, and tears. I missed my mother on her deathbed. I missed my baby's birth because I was working, and now they're giving me a pink slip. It's a betrayal. There's also betrayal trauma if somebody in your close circle decides to unalive themselves. It's, this person was my best friend and they took my
Yes.
friend away. That's a betrayal trauma. You could also have betrayal trauma from yourself or God. I talk with many women, one of which who said, I did my prayers and I ate my shakes and did my exercises, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I feel like my body betrayed me or God betrayed me. So, and then that also gets into a lot of times if I'm working with couples that have a faith background, they'll say, my relationship with God now is strained because all my life I prayed for a spouse that, to fall in love with and to marry. And I truly felt God put this person in my life. And now this person betrayed me. Now I'm questioning my relationship and understanding with God. So that's just to give you a bunch of different stuff. But betrayal trauma is definitely a niche, but it's also on a a spectrum, and
Mm,
it's not just with our significant other. It could happen with
yes.
our parent or child or anyone we have a reliance upon or a dependency upon.
I'm so grateful that you brought up it's so funny, just this I think it was either this morning or last night on the Knowing Show, we were talking about feeling betrayed by God, and I was sharing a little bit of my experience with that when my brother-in-law was killed. I definitely felt betrayed by God, and it was I really had to go and contend with God. You know, it's like, okay, I got to go fight this out. You know, there's this biblical story of a gentleman who, you know, he's wrestling. He actually wrestles with an angel for all night long. So for about 12 hours, he's wrestling with an angel to get the answer to
Daniel?
his prayer. And so, you know, obviously like the allegory of that of wrestling and contending rather than closing up, retreating, suppressing, ignoring. So I'd love to hear, you know, to the point of effectively people being maybe it's broken enough to face the betrayal, or the betrayal just they it was almost like they couldn't even help but face the betrayal, because I know that there's a lot of folks that do suppress and do silence and do ignore, you know, for those people 30, 40 years later. So what are the common I guess you could say even band-aids that people would apply and administer improperly to betrayal that really can get in the way and prevent their healing?
Oh, Christine, Lord have mercy. One of the things we love to do
Mm.
is busy ourselves.
Yeah.
Let me download a game on my phone. Let me
Yes.
go
Oh
get a
gosh.
snack. Let me binge watch Forensic Files. Let me, whatever. Because think about it. And listen, we're all human. I get this. We want to run from pain. Nobody wants to face the fire and walk into it, although that's sometimes the best thing to do. But we don't want to walk into pain. We want to numb, distract, avoid. And we usually do that with unhealthy things, whether that be alcohol, whether that be drugs, whether that be Forensic Files, whether that be on our phone, whether that be cutting ourselves, whatever it is, not to feel the pain. We love to numb, distract, and avoid. So it could be anything that's unhealthy, gambling, hooking up sexually, whatever the case may be. I mean, I even consider affairs a drug of choice to numb, distract, and avoid. So, that's one of the things I try and really help my couples understand, because, well, I digress, but one of the things I really, really try to help my couples understand is the person who was betrayed has zero to do with the reason they were betrayed. Which, by the way, that leads me into something. Let me just say something very quickly, and I don't mean to dominate this conversation. So
Please,
please,
no. This is
okay,
why you're here.
okay. There's many different reasons that set betrayal trauma apart from non-betrayal trauma, because a lot of people think, oh, you work in the trauma field. Well, yes, but listen, if you need back surgery, you don't go to a dentist. Now, both of them are doctors, but you need to go to who specializes in this. So
Good.
I
That's
specialize
good.
in betrayal trauma. Sure, I can work with trauma.
Oh no. Okay, wait. I think he's back. Okay. Okay. Keep
I'm
going.
here. Okay. So let me just give you, just for time purposes, three reasons why betrayal trauma differs from non-betrayal trauma. Okay. So let's, hypothetically speaking, and I hope I don't trigger you. Let's just say you lose a parent. Okay. That could be traumatic. That's very traumatic. However, with betrayal trauma, it's personalized. With non-betrayal trauma, it's not personalized. So with if you lose a parent, yes, it
Mm,
affects you, but you don't think, well, geez, what did I have to do with that? What, they died because of me. When in betrayal trauma, it's what about me that was wrong?
mm,
Was my butt too big? Was I not a good kisser? Did my breasts? I mean, you start asking yourself these questions. So it's a
right.
personal thing. The next thing that it's different from non-betrayal trauma is that it's a secret society. So if your parent passes away, you're going to have neighbors coming over with ravioli
Yes.
and friends with macaroni and cheese, and people, your boss is going to give you some bereavement time, and somebody's going to send flowers to your house and whatever. You don't pick up the phone and say, hey, I just got cheated on, time off. I mean, you just don't do that. So it's a very secret society. And that adds to the profound loneliness and sadness of the healing journey, because it is a secret society. Now, don't get me
Mm,
wrong. There are those people that get on social media and say, do you know what that dirty blank did to me, whatever? But that's a whole nother thing. And that has severe consequences, which if we have time, I'll get into. But the
yeah.
last reason why betrayal trauma differs from non-betrayal trauma, Christine, is that trauma, let's just say you lose your parent, it's going to affect the here and now, and it's going to affect the future. Betrayal trauma is the only trauma that affects the present, the future, but also the past. Because now you can't
Mm,
look at old photo albums the way you used to. Now you can't think about your vacation in Disney 2 years ago without thinking, wait a minute, when he told me he was having a meeting and he had to step out of the room, did he actually have a meeting, or was he calling her or him or whatever, or meeting so and so? So betrayal trauma affects the present, the future, and the past. So that's how betrayal trauma is different from, say, trauma. And this is why, and then I'll be quiet, I promise. This is why when people are experiencing betrayal trauma, you got to be very careful who you talk to. Because if you talk to just, say, somebody who's not skilled or trained in betrayal trauma, they're going to apply trauma techniques to that. It's
yes.
not necessarily going to feed your soul with what you need.
Wow. Well, it's so I'll just get let's just go right into it. And it's funny because I had no anticipation for, honestly, Mr. J, what I like doing is I'll do a very high level kind of deep dive into my guests, but a high level deep dive. I'll do a high level
I love it.
examination. But and I really like to, it's kind of Stephen King style, these interviews where he actually did zero research and just sat down and was like, who are you? And then let the conversation go. So it's alluding, this style is more so Stephen King. So let's just, I'd actually like to, if you're up for it, y'all. And for those of you who are here in the chat, I want to talk about a couple of things, and I'm just going to point this out, or I guess say this, Tomb 313. I want to get to that, what you said here about taking accountability, because that's really, really important. In trauma, in these moments, what does it look like to actually be a steward and take ownership over our lives and kind of resume power? So we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But before we do, I actually want to make this super applicable to folks here, because I think cheating and or being left is very relevant for most everybody. I was talking to a gentleman and he said when he was 19, he was a tradesman. So he and I both work in the trades business. And he was talking about how when he was 19 years old, his girlfriend dumped him. And he said that was probably one of the most defining moments of his whole life. He's in his 40s now, happily married with kids. These moments have so much power over us, especially more so when you're married and this happens. So I got married at 20 and my husband left at 28 when I was 28. So we were married for 8.5 years. And there's been really not a ton of examination on the betrayal side. And in fact, I've actually done what Tomb 313 talks more so about, of taking accountability. I was like, okay, what did I do wrong? What's everything I did that lended to my marriage failing? Now, I don't know if he cheated. I don't have any proof, so I'm not even going to go there. But I will say that my reaction and my response was actually to take full accountability and to look in the mirror. And that really actually led me to this whole journey of, okay, well, who am I? Who was I created to be, versus let me live in reaction and in response to try to become who people need me to be so that they're happy. And, so much of that was because of the conditioning I had in childhood and frankly, the environment religiously, all that good stuff. All that to say, I have done very little examination of how he hurt me and what he did. And so I'm really curious in your perspective. And I actually don't talk about him hardly at all on the show because I just, I can't control anything that happened in that regard in the past. And he's not involved in my life anymore. So what I can control is me. So how can I change? Can you tell us what you think about that approach? Because I so often do see people more so take the role of the victim.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Let me just say this. One of the reasons we take on that role and we do self-blame is because of co-creation. So if you take a white rose and you cut the stem in, say, three, and you put one in red food coloring, one in purple or whatever primary colors, one in yellow, the actual leaves of the rose are going to change colors completely. And that's what happens with us. We're not just with somebody, we're co-creating a new existence. with somebody.
Interesting. What a good perspective.
So when our roots are torn, that affects our mind, body, soul, past, present, future, because who we co-created with. It's like this: if you were on an island with your family, okay, and every day you and your siblings jumped off and
Mm,
went swimming, and then when you got tired or when the sun went down, you turned around, you swam back to your island. Well, when we disengage, for whatever word you want to say, with somebody, whether it's our doing, their doing, life's doing, that's like going out and swimming in the middle of the ocean, and you're tired and you're hungry and you're fatigued, and then you turn around and the island that you knew completely is gone. You're
mm,
lost and you're confused and you're sometimes your mind is hijacked. So we do co-create. That's number one. But one of the things I want to say is this: every single person, and I know with you, you weren't specifically talking about betrayal, but since that's my field, let me just say this: every single person has to take 100% responsibility for how they showed up in the relationship or the marriage.
yes.
However, if there's a break of trust or betrayal, they can't own any of it.
Yes.
Zero. And that's what I think is a hard distinction with people. And I this is what I try to tell
Mm,
people. When two people get married, which, by the way, side note, I also am a wedding officiant, and I really try to encourage my couples to have some premarital coaching beforehand,
yeah,
which
that's
a lot
good.
of them don't. And hey, that's your choice. But so many times, Christine, I'll be officiating a wedding, and what's in my mind is these two people are exchanging I do without even knowing who the I am is. Not to mention, we all come to the marital table with, I mean, and we all do this. I fall short of this too. I did fall short of this. We all come to the marriage table with our sack of problems. And after we say, I do, we're like, okay, now here's my sack. You're going to fix me. And our partner's like, I don't have the capacity, the interest, the time, the knowledge. However, here's my sack too. You're going to fix me. So really, if anybody's watching this, premarital coaching or counseling is important, whatever. Anyway, this is what I tell people really quick, and then I'll be quiet, I promise. If you have right now, if nobody else is in your house, and if you have right now on your kitchen a gun, is anyone going to be injured or wounded with that gun sitting there? No. If you have a loaded gun in your kitchen, loaded gun on the counter right now,
Mm,
you and I are talking, is anybody going to get hurt? No.
mm,
The only time somebody gets hurt is when somebody chooses to pick up that gun, aim, pull the trigger, and fire. And so my point is this, Christine: if
mm,
you are in a marriage, I don't care if you, not that I want people to do this, I don't care if you weigh 600 pounds, you have one tooth, and you beat your spouse upside the head with a frying pan every other Tuesday. That's a marital issue. Once they get out of the marriage, that became their problem. This is why I don't want to hear, Mr. J, do you know what he or she did to me that led me to my affair? No. Well, first of all, affairs start in childhood, which if you want to get into that, I can, but that's a whole
mm,
other. So we have to take 100% responsibility how we showed up in the relationship of the marriage, but we have to make a distinction. We have zero responsibility with somebody's choices and decisions to turn away from us. Very quickly, I'm sorry, I do one
mm,
more thing. When we
mhm,
get married, it's almost like two people enter the boxing ring, right? And you,
mhm.
you stand back to back and you fight. Okay, in-laws, I got your back. We're gonna fight. Bills coming in, I got your back. We're gonna fight. Somebody
Yeah.
has a medical condition, I got your back. We're gonna fight. When somebody decides to step outside and betray the marriage, they're leaving your back and they're leaving
Mm,
you're there alone. So now it's not a marriage. So I don't want to hear from anybody. Do you know, Mr. J, what he or she did? They kept sex from me, or they did this to me. What? That was all marriage. You chose to step out of that boxing ring. You have to take 100%
mm.
responsibility for doing that.
I really appreciate this perspective because, to be honest, I think that when we assume all the not all of it, but a good, when you're like only looking at what you did, you're forgetting the marriage. So it really is, marriage is its own entity for consideration. Yes, what are the choices I made within the marriage, but what was the marriage like? What was the ring? I like to think of when we do the work. I think of it, honestly, I love that you said boxing ring. I think of when Theodore Roosevelt talks about the man in the arena. And he talks about it's so much easier for the critic to stand and point the finger and laugh and have all their opinions without actually doing the work. The man in the arena is the one marred and sweaty and bloody, and they're doing the work. That example of, man, what happens in the marriage? It's just, there's so much, because it's two people and it's within its own entity. And so to that point, I'm grateful you brought that up, because frankly, I think that there is an element where we're not trained how to do relationships whatsoever. So then when it gets really hard, we have no context. We have no category of, how do I even begin to work through this? And how do I either not control the situation by assuming all blame, or be the victim by giving all the blame? And so maintaining this balance, how would you advise for those of us who are in a relationship where there hasn't been betrayal yet? What is a healthy way of kind of balancing, honestly, what almost feels like this power? Either I'm giving you all the power by playing the victim, or I'm taking all the power by trying to control to protect myself from getting hurt.
Well, let me tell you something. If anybody knew that answer, they'd be a multi-billionaire. But let me just say this. I'll never forget, my grandmother told me one time, because I was talking to her about divorce. Why are the divorce rates so high? And she said, honey, when grandpa and I got married, we were born and raised and got married in a generation that believed when something is broke, you don't throw it away, you fix it. And that really spoke volumes to me, because that told me that there was a lot of things about her marriage that needed tweaking, needed help, that were probably broken. But what was more important than that was, we don't throw it away. We fix it. And I told you at the beginning of this session, we as humans don't like to feel pain. I mean, especially in today's world, where you can get everything within moments. If I want a cheeseburger right now, I can go 2 seconds, and within 2 minutes go into a drive-through and I got a cheeseburger. If I want a shirt, I go to Amazon on Amazon Prime, and within a few hours I get my shirt. And unfortunately, that also is the bad thing, because if people want to cheat, or if they want a piece of butt, all they got to do is download an app, and within an hour they can go meet somebody and cheat on their spouse. So there's the good and the bad. But listen, to your question, relationships are a very fragile dance. How do I hold on to who I am and still grow and be who I want to be, while I'm holding on to you and supporting you and allowing you to be you? I say all the time, Christine, we are far more than human beings. We're human evolvements, because you're not the same person you are today than you were 2 years ago. And you're not going to be the same person 2 years from now that you are today. And when you're in a relationship, we have to constantly build bridges to each other for those connections. Because I don't have to tell you, like, life in general, there's many forces pulling couples apart, many forces. So we have to really go out of our way to continuously build bridges to each other. I was working with this couple, and they were going out for their 25th anniversary. 25th anniversary. And I said, listen, I want you to go to Google and type in questions to ask on your first date. And I want you guys to sit down and ask each other. And they're like, Mr. Jevin, oh my God, I can tell when she's in a bad mood before she even comes in the house. I said, wonderful. Just, if you're coming to me and paying me, take my recommendation. So next week they came and they said, honestly, it blew me away. His beliefs changed politically, and I never knew. Her beliefs changed spiritually, and I never know. I heard our understanding of finances, we're completely off. So we evolve. And if you don't continually build bridges to get to know who this new person is that you're married, because we're human evolvements, then by default, life is going to pull us apart. So it's a very, very fragile dance.
Mm,
I say all the time, and I'm rambling, so please stop me if you need to. I say all the time, when two people come together, it's like you wear sandpaper, and and
mm,
and after that passionate love wears off, then compassionate love comes in. So we go from
mm,
passion love to compassion love. But during that compassion love is where the sandpaper comes out. And now we're trying to file each other down. And we're like, oh, I don't
mm.
like this. And I don't like you. And I don't like that. But really, if you stick to it, eventually you guys are both filed down and both of you have a shine. And that's what you
Yes.
drive.
Okay, so I do have a question. I love this in terms of intentionally building bridges, and we're human. evolvers rather than human beings. Because you're so right. My gosh, we changed so much. And I've heard something about the 7 year, I guess you could say,
Switch.
concept.
Some people say the 7 year itch. It's actually the 7 year switch.
Okay, can you talk about the 7 year switch?
So basically, it used to be the 7 year itch where people start, looking at other people and they start, they kind of just, we get into a very complacent arena
Mm,
after about 7. I don't necessarily agree to that or subscribe to that theory, although it is pretty common and whatever. But like, when you first get together with somebody and you wake up and you look over and you see their face on the pillow and you're like, oh, whatever. After about the 7 year mark, you wake up, you turn over and you're like, oh, it's you again.
yes. Oh, hello.
Yeah.
You
And
here?
listen, by that time, you're very relaxed in front of the person. They've seen you with no makeup, without the hair
Yeah,
pieces, without the eyeliner, without the shave, whatever the case may be.
right.
And so it is the 7 year switch. And actually, I'm going to be honest with you. Even though I mean, I do believe in it and subscribe to it, but I don't want to give it that much life and whatever.
Mm,
There are people that come to me after, well, actually 7 and 11 for some reason, the 7 year mark and the 11 year mark,
yeah.
is where people start to, my husband's has a wandering eye and I don't like it, or my wife is talking way too much to her boss after hours and I don't like it. One of the things that our brain does, if our brain feels that every conversation is predictable, we start to turn off and get disinterested. So
Wow.
yeah, so one of the things I tell people all the time is variety is the spice of life. So really try to inject some fun stuff into your relationship and your marriage. Christine, actually, I just did this with my spouse the other day. One of us blindfolded the other person, and we stood up and we made a cake together. So like,
Oh,
let's
that's
just
so
hypothetically
cute.
speaking, let's just say it's you and your spouse, your partner, your significant other, whatever. They would stand behind you. You would be blindfolded and they would pick up the egg and they would guide your hands and whatever. And I'm going to tell you something. When that cake is finished, it tastes different.
Yes. Oh,
You
I
created
bet.
it together. So this is what I'm saying. Like, listen, I've been married going on 24 years. I have young kids. I'm a very busy person. Trust me, I get it. I get how, it could
Mm,
be, it could be a job. But if
yeah.
you don't build those bridges, if you don't inject that creativity, and if you don't do exciting things, our brain will just default. And then next thing you know, we're sitting on the couch across from each other, scrolling on our phones for hours. Or after our kids
Mm,
leave for college, we look at each other and say, who are you?
mm. I love this. Build bridges. Don't be predictable. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Mr. J. I love the concept of, am I actually evolving myself? Am I doing the work to even be interesting? Like, do I have something new to contribute? So it's like, what are things that we can both pursue together? I love that you brought up play. Man, I even tonight, actually tonight on the Knowing Show, we're going to be doing trivia at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if people want to join,
Ooh.
but it's easy to just get so focused on either hard conversations, sometimes even getting stuck in a growth trajectory. I actually realized I was doing that with my partner last year, where I was just like, how are we going to grow? And he was like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, okay, let's have fun. And so play, man, it's so life-giving. It's literally the thing of children that remind us of, so many of us will long and kind of ache for that time, unless there was truthfully, we've got Ray here in the chat. He was sharing how, childhood was actually so painful for him, where his mom left, and neither her nor his dad really had time, and like since he was 16 years old, like that's been his story, and he's been alone. And so like some of us will ache for, childhood, and some of us are like, I actually want to run away from that entirely, which then prohibits play. So either way, it's like play is feels so inaccessible for us as adults. So I guess my question is twofold. How much, and maybe it's not even how much, but like a reminder perhaps that we do need to take radical responsibility to continue to evolve ourselves with intention, but then also identify, how do we figure out if there are blocks preventing us from play that would allow for that point of connection?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Adulting can suck because we have a lot of responsibility. I say all the time, like okay, I'll just use me for an example. Okay. I get up in the morning and and God wants more out of me that day. Then I go to work, my clients want more out of me that day. Then my kids come home from school, my kids want more out of me that day. Then I go to church on Sunday, my pastor wants more out of me that day. Then I volunteer, serving food or whatever. We are stretched so thin. We are stretched so thin. And I don't know if it's going to get any easier in the future. So I don't even know if I'm answering your question. I apologize. One of the things I wanted to say, and we can come back to this, is it's so important for us to have personal boundaries. And when I mean boundaries, what I mean is no is a complete sentence. So if we are stretched too thin, um, I mean, obviously we can be nice. That doesn't fit in my schedule. Not at this time, but thank you for thinking of me, whatever. But nowadays, especially, we live in an era of people pleasing. And this is where so many people are depressed, overwhelmed, angry because they don't have whatever that's needed to feel
Mm,
confident enough to say no. So they take on something and then they wind up resenting the person who asked them and then turning that resentment inwards because we didn't have the confidence or the empowerment to say no. So personal boundaries are very, very important. Now, for anybody that's listening, that's like, well, I don't even know what boundaries is or how do I make one. One of the things that I tell people all the time, create a values assessment. What do you value? What do you value? I'm
mm,
going to give you an example. I kind of value my time, which is why I appreciated your email today when you were late, because one of my boundaries is I value time. So now boundaries, as we all know, are like religion. It's not to make everybody else know how to live. It's for how you're going to live. So
right.
I tell people, create a values assessment. So one of my values is timeliness. If somebody says try to be there at 2:30, I really try to be there at 2:30. And if not, I give them a heads up, a courtesy FYI of why I can't be there. Now,
Mm,
I can't, if somebody decides that they're going to disrespect my time, now I have to enforce my boundaries. That could be anything from just, it could be a joke. It could be a sit
mm,
down conversation. It could be a warning. It could be a please don't do this. It could be disengagement. So you not only have to, so basically, I have people write down a values assessment. What do you value most in life? And then I invert those, and those create boundaries. Then you have to
mm,
ask yourself, how are you going to enforce your boundaries if people start blurring them? And what happens is that once you have and you start enforcing boundaries, you start to it builds on your self-confidence and you feel much more
mhm.
empowered and in control and things like that. And then telling somebody no doesn't come, so whatever. Now, I wanted to say something real quick too before I get off. When I'm working with couples that have broken trust or betrayed, I say, you have now three gardens in your life. You now have three gardens in your life. You have your personal garden, and this has a little something to do with what you just said. You have your personal garden, meaning you have to tend to your personal garden. What does that mean? It means you got to eat well, you got to do some exercises, you got to, if you pray or meditate, I mean, you got to tend to your personal garden, right? If you're in a relationship or a marriage, you also have to tend to that garden. So whatever you do to build those bridges and to keep touch with each other, make sure you prioritize. You have to water that marriage garden. Now, if you're
Mm,
also trying to repair and rebuild after broken trust, you have a whole nother garden you have to water. And that means specifically tending to and watering the repair and rebuild garden. And what do I mean by that? Is a lot of times people come to me and say, let's just use a male female couple and let's just say the male steps out. And
mhm,
I will say, well, Mr. J, I asked her how her day was. And I'll say, well, coworkers ask how their day was. If you broke her heart, shattered her future, her soul, what she believed to be her truth and her story and her marriage, you need to go into her repair and rebuild garden, not the marriage
mm,
garden. How's your day? The repair. So basically, did you have any triggers today? Did I do anything today that made you feel unsafe? What can I do tomorrow to make you feel safe? Did you have any dreams or panic attacks that you want me to help you out? Do you need a hug from me right now? What do you need?
mm,
So it's not, you don't, so we have different gardens now, and you have to water each specific garden. Going back to what your point is, I think when we tend to our own garden, we're also tending to the marriage or relationship garden.
yes, I completely agree.
And then we also have to put energy into the relationship or marriage garden too. Well, I'll tell you something. One of the things that's so nice is when people come together, we don't try to control them.
Mm,
We try to share with them. You know, I have a background in theater, and I'm huge. I like talking about trivia. Put me on any trivia show, 80s music. I'm gonna walk out a
That's
winner.
what
I'm
we're
telling
doing tonight is 80s music.
you. Stop. Stop.
You have to join.
And my spouse is not at all into
Mm,
things. So you know, you want to encourage and recommend and get excited and bring along with, but also build those bridges and get to know, you know, what your
yes.
spouse is doing. And so this is what I mean, like, you know, and the other thing too, I don't know if you have ever been to Chick-fil-A, if you have one where you are. One of the things that they say all the time when you ask for something at this restaurant is they say, "My pleasure." And I think it's so important for couples not to say yes, not to say no problem, to say my pleasure. Like, for instance, when you get a chance, can you give me a drink of water? My pleasure. When you get a
Mhm,
chance, can you look at this TV? It's not working. My pleasure. Because now you're letting
mm,
your partner know I'm excited to be a part of your life. And I'm telling you
mm.
something, pebbles make mountains and raindrops make seas. These little things that we do every day, they absolutely build up to create wonderful marriages and relationships.
Mm.
I'm all over the board. I apologize.
I know this has been so good. I really loved, well, frankly, I actually, before I kind of pull on a thread of something you shared, there was two very juxtaposing comments earlier that I wanted to bring up because I love your perspective. And this is where talking about this is hard to stay so high level because it's so much context is needed to be able to really give something super meaningful. We're having some juxtaposition here in terms of the comments, but also just you and I sharing to begin with. Someone made a comment. They're like, well, you're divorced. Like, how can you talk really about relationships? And you've been in a marriage for 24 years. So, I was married for 8.5 years, no longer married. You've been married for 24 years. And so we're both bringing different angles, and then the different angles in the comments, which I really like. So I just kind of want to say I really like having juxtaposing points of view because when we exist only in our own echo chamber, it's really dangerous. So just putting that out there for those of you who have had maybe even a visceral reaction to some of the things Mr. J has said, I think it would be really good for you to consider, well, why is that? Like, what in me is coming up, and what's the genesis? So, like, I like to think of it as kind of following the yellow brick road down to the core memory of that emotion. And it could just be a good exercise, honestly, when we jump off here in a few minutes. So, that's number one. Number two, the comments. Someone says, this is why I like being alone because relationships are so difficult. And then someone else said, this is, I actually feel really lonely. And so I miss being in a relationship. So, how would you encourage those of us that aren't married yet, that aren't even in a relationship where we are really alone? Like, how do you guide us to effectively prepare so that when we go into the boxing ring, we've got solid stance, we've worked out, we're strong, we've got the right gloves on?
Well, first of all, let me just say this. Lonely and alone are two completely different things because I talk to people every single day who have been married 40 years, but they're very lonely. Loneliness is a state of mind. Alone might be a predicament. So yeah, you might not be with anybody, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're lonely. Lonely is a state of mind. Alone, that's a predicament. That's a situation. Now, a couple things. First of all, the whole people say all the time, when's the best time to have kids? When the best time? Now listen, and there are some things, you know, really you should hopefully be somewhat financially decent when you have kids. You know, hopefully you're married. Hopefully you're, you know, there's some things. But if you wait until the ideal situation to have kids, you're never going to have kids. It's the same thing with relationships and marriage. It's like, you know, I need to work on myself. And absolutely, absolutely. But what's wonderful is when you can find somebody that you can help each other grow. So that's like, now I want to tell you this too. A lot of times there's something in psychology called, there's something about that person I don't like about myself. And I like what you said about asking the question, what is it in me that feels a certain way? Because I'm telling you something. Do you know how many times I'm talking to a couple and they bicker, or one of them or both of them are bickering and arguing and they want to leave the relationship? And you want to know why? It's because their partner, their spouse, their significant other is mirroring the bad parts they don't like about themselves. And so, and this is why I love shadow work so much, because as a matter of fact, I just put out something on social media. I talked about the roommates that we all have, and we all have roommates. Um, okay, for example, so Christine, one of the things that I tell people when they discover a betrayal in their relationship, I'll say the betrayal that you are currently feeling, the effects of what you're currently feeling, is about 40% at hand, your betrayal.
Mm.
60% of what we're feeling is that it's hitting a core insecurity that we never heal.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
this is why if you go back, like Rose said in the Titanic, are you ready to go back to Titanic? If you go back to Titanic and you heal that original wound,
Yeah.
now that's not going to be such a sore spot or a trigger, not to mention you're not going to be giving your partner who hurt you, and they have a lot of work to do, don't get me wrong, you're not giving them additional work that they're absolutely cannot fix because they're broken themselves. That's why they went out and had a beast and strayed. I'm all over the board and I apologize.
No, Mr. J, I think that this actually speaks a lot to kind of our original question of radical responsibility and looking in the mirror. To the degree I am not healed, I am that much more likely to have the flint and stone experience and get triggered and activated and have this massive rupture rather than, oh, that was unkind. But it's not hitting a core wound. Man, those core wounds, they will get you. And
Preach
it's not
it.
yeah, like, I gotta tell you, Mr. J, I spent about 2.5, 3 years, it was 3 years before entering into a relationship, and my husband was the only one I'd ever been with. So I'd only ever dated, kissed, like, I was so, like, this innocent little 20-year-old getting married. Don't advise it. But, when I got divorced, I was like, "Okay, I have no idea who I am." I'm 28 years old, and most of your 20s is actually spent to figure that out, whereas I was kind of caregiving in so many ways in my 20s. And so I took about 3 years, just completely didn't date anybody and just let me go inward and heal. And man, I was so I was a different person. I really transformed. However, when you get into another relationship, you think you heal so much and then you're like, "Oh, boy, did I not know that was still a problem."
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things, I just want to say this for anybody that's listening now or in the future, one of the things that would be really beneficial to do is, first of all, to find core wounds. Absolutely. And you can do that by, really, there's so many ways you can do that. First of all, you can ask yourself, did I feel safe when I was younger? Why or why not? Did I feel accepted when I was younger? Why or why not? Did I feel loved when I was younger? Why or why not? Then when you have those answers, then you ask the 5 to 7 levels of why. So for instance, and I just put this on social media. It's funny that I'm even talking about this. Like, let me give you an example. Um, uh, Hypothetically speaking, one of the questions I have people ask is, what do you dislike about yourself? And then once you answer, now go into the 5 to 7 layers of why. So for example, I ask myself, what do I dislike about myself? Again, this is a hypothetical. I don't like it when people touch my spouse. Okay, why don't you like it when people touch? Why don't I like it when people touch my spouse? Well, because physical touch is my love language, and I feel that they're giving them love. Okay, what does it mean when you feel who you're with is giving love? Well, it means that they might leave me. Okay, why is that important? They might leave you. Well, because then I'll be alone. Why is it important that you don't feel alone? Well, because then it might trigger my childhood abandonment wounds. Ugh. And you keep going down those why. And I'll tell you something, when you get down to the 5 to 7 layers of why, and you come down to the real and raw, I call them roommates. We all have roommates in our head. And it's our shadows, it's our negative dialogue, our whatever. Once we get down to it, what we need to do is we need to evict them and then put boundaries up. What do I mean by this? First of all, those inner dialogues that we had in our brain, they came in years ago. They've yet to pay $1 rent. Kick their butts out. But here's the deal, Christine. Let's just say you have 10 roommates right now that have been living in your house for free for 40 years. What's the first thing they're going to do when you try to kick them out of your house? No, I don't have money to eat.
Yeah.
I want to come back in. So the minute you have an inner dialogue of what
Mm,
you say, oh, no. My boundary now is I refuse to believe that. I refuse to replay
mm.
it in my head. I refuse this. and you absolutely, and that's your boundary, and you need to hold yourself to
Mhm.
that boundary. Because I'm going to tell you something. So much of our trauma is believing in the lies that we told ourselves
Right.
or that other people have told us.
We traumatize ourselves more than most anyone.
Ooh, preach it 100%.
I'm mindful of the time. You said that was a value for you. We're right at time that was on our calendar. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, Mr. J. I'd love to do a part two with you at some point.
Sure.
Frankly, I love that you and your wife are really, really consistent in applying fun and building intentional bridges to stay connected because it's hard. We've got all the excuses in the world to drift away and assign blame. So with that, thank you so much, Mr. J. You were a delight to chat with. How can people get in touch with you?
I have the easiest site. It's mrjrelationshipcoach.com.
Love
But
it.
here's the deal. Even if people don't ever want to talk to me, see me, nothing like that, I have a lot of free resources on my website. So it's
Good.
mrjrelationshipcoach.com. Just come and take advantage of the free resources, if nothing else.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, y'all. I really so much of what was said today is very much so in alignment with I don't know, it's just very much so in alignment with what I've experienced on my journey to heal. So if it could even be worth coming back and listening to this. I know it's in the chat, it's hard to like really listen while engaged. You know, the chat's a fun place to hang out for all of us. So it could be worth re-listening to this. Mr. Day, I certainly will be. And I'd love to have a conversation in the future again if you'd ever like. But thank you. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for your time. It was so wonderful. Y'all come back and join me tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're just going to play some trivia and have some fun. So come and join me then. But in the meantime,